Is the world truly witnessing a shift in power, or have we simply been late to realize that control of the global luxury industry has changed hands? Not to a country, not to an old American conglomerate, but to a single figure named Jungkook? The question sounds excessive, even provocative, yet that is precisely where its unease lies. Because when Jungkook of BTS was announced as the global ambassador for Chanel fragrance and beauty in early 2026, the reaction that followed was not merely fan cheers or praise from lifestyle media. There was a brief silence, almost imperceptible, in the boardrooms of the Western fashion industry. A pause that usually occurs only when something very big, and potentially capable of redrawing the map of power, has just happened. The luxury fashion and beauty industry has long been known as an exclusive, closed world, carefully guarded by Western historical narratives. For decades, the great names of Paris, Milan, New York, and London have served as the gravitational center of global taste. Yet 2026 revealed different signs. According to a report by Grazia Singapore, the wave of celebrity ambassador appointments from across Asia is no longer merely a matter of adding diverse faces to campaigns, but a strong indication that the center of cultural influence is shifting. Chanel, Tiffany & Company, Bulgari, Guerlain, and Saint Laurent simultaneously entrusted their representation to figures who were not born out of the traditional Western entertainment system. Amid that long list, one name emerged with an intensity that was hard to ignore. Jungkook, as a member of BTS and a platinum-certified solo artist, Jungkook is certainly not a new name. However, his appointment as global ambassador for Chanel fragrance and beauty carries weight far beyond album sales statistics or social media follower counts. This is not simply about popularity, but about symbolic legitimacy. Chanel is not a brand that chooses its face lightly. The fashion house is known for its obsession with heritage narratives, aesthetic continuity, and its historical position as a symbol of European luxury. When Chanel chooses Jungkook, the question is no longer why Jungkook, but rather, what is happening to the value system of this industry? In his official statement, Jungkook said that Chanel, to him, is a pioneering house that honors timeless heritage while continuously reinventing itself through modernity. The sentence sounds simple, even diplomatic. Yet beneath that simplicity lies a deep resonance. Jungkook implicitly positions himself not as a passive face, but as part of a creative dialogue. He speaks of loyalty to personal style and the courage to embrace new challenges, two concepts that historically have often been separated within the Western luxury industry. At this point, many analysts began to read the appointment as something more than a mere commercial collaboration. What is striking is that Jungkook is not alone. Grazia Singapore notes how Song Yuchi of IDLE joined Tiffany & Company, bringing a confident energy that reflects the brand's modern vision. Shota Watanabe became Todd's first male ambassador in Japan, marking explicit recognition of the East Asian market and aesthetic. Milk Pantsa Vosbian made history as the first Thai woman to become a Saint Laurent ambassador. Song Hye-kyo was chosen as Guerlain's global ambassador, reinforcing a narrative of elegance no longer dependent solely on European faces. Nana Komatsu, Zhang Lingyi, Sean Ichiwan, Kento Nakajima, Yang Yang, and Coleman Domingo each carries a distinct cultural identity, yet all are united by one common thread. They serve as bridges between a new generation and luxury houses striving to survive in an era of rapid change. Still, among all these names, Jungkook occupies a unique position. He is not merely an Asian representative, but a symbol of a global phenomenon that has long made the American entertainment industry uneasy: K-pop. For years, K-pop was viewed as a fleeting trend, popular, yet not considered serious enough to threaten Western cultural dominance. Chanel's decision seems to shatter that assumption. When a brand with a history as formidable as Chanel entrusts the face of its global fragrance and beauty lines to a South Korean idol, the message sent to the American industry is unmistakably clear, even if never spoken aloud. Does this mean the US industry is beginning to lose its grip? The question grows more relevant when we observe how new generations of consumers interact with the concept of luxury. For Gen Z and those that follow, luxury is no longer defined by geographic origin or old social status, but by emotional relevance and narrative authenticity. Jungkook, with his background as an artist who grew alongside a global fan base, brings a story that feels personal and genuine. He does not come from the tightly curated Hollywood star system, but from an ecosystem built on direct connection with audiences. Here is where the greatest surprise begins to surface. Jungkook's appointment is not merely a marketing decision, but an acknowledgement that the center of cultural power has shifted in a direction that can no longer be fully controlled by the American industry. Chanel, along with other luxury brands, seems to understand that to survive, they must follow this current, even if it means sacrificing the dominance of old narratives. For fans, especially ARMY, this moment is celebrated as an emotional victory. But for long-established industry players, it is a warning signal. This chapter is far from over. In fact, this is where it truly begins. Because when one of the world's largest luxury brands dares to take this step, others will be forced to follow. And when that happens, the question that once sounded dramatic may turn into an unavoidable reality. Is Jungkook merely a new face of the luxury industry, or a sign that global control has truly shifted? When the industry begins to ask itself whether this change can still be controlled. Because after the euphoria surrounding the announcement of Jungkook as the global ambassador for Chanel fragrance and beauty subsided, a deeper, more academic question emerged, one that is also far more threatening to the old order. Are Western luxury brands still the subjects that determine the direction of culture, or have they now become parties that merely react to currents shaped beyond their control, particularly from Asia? For a long time, the United States positioned itself as the center of global cultural distribution. Hollywood, fashion magazines, music production houses, and major retail networks became the primary tools for deciding who deserved to be called a global icon. Yet data on new generation consumer behavior shows patterns that are increasingly difficult to ignore. Loyalty is no longer built through massive advertising or institutional legitimacy, but through emotional closeness, collective identity, and narratives of struggle that feel real. It is within this context that Jungkook becomes an exceptionally powerful symbol. He is not merely an artist chosen by Chanel. He is a representation of a cultural ecosystem that grew outside America's dominant structures, yet managed to penetrate them without permission. Chanel's decision to appoint Jungkook did not emerge in a vacuum. It coincided with a series of ambassador appointments from Asia documented in Grazia, Singapore. Song Yuchi with Tiffany & Company, for example, marked how the legendary American jewelry brand began redefining its modern image. Yuchi was not positioned as an exotic figure, but as a symbol of self-expression and optimism, values long claimed as Western, now re-articulated through an Asian face. At the same time, Tod's chose Shota Watanabe as its first male ambassador in Japan, as if acknowledging that the legitimacy of elegant masculinity no longer needs to be filtered through a European lens. What is most compelling, however, is how all these appointments form a pattern rather than a coincidence. Milk Pantsa Vosbian became St. Lawrence ambassador as the first Thai woman to do so, delivering the message that sharp, modern elegance is no longer bound to traditional fashion capitals. Song Hye Kyo with Guerlain demonstrated how the concept of classic luxury, embodied by the iconic B bottle, can feel alive and relevant through a figure from the Korean entertainment industry. Nana Komatsu, after a decade as a Chanel fashion ambassador, is now trusted as a Chanel beauty ambassador, underscoring that long-term relational continuity is valued more than fleeting sensation. Still, Jungkook stands at the most sensitive crossroads. He is not only an ambassador, but a symbol of the BTS phenomenon that has long sparked debate within the American industry. BTS has broken chart records, filled stadiums, and built a global fan base without relying on the traditional US promotional machine. When Jungkook, as an individual, now holds a central role in one of Chanel's most strategic divisions, the implicit message becomes increasingly difficult to ignore. Cultural power is no longer monopolized. Fashion industry analysts have begun to read this appointment as a form of adaptation, forced yet intelligent. Luxury brands realize that if they continue to rely solely on familiar faces from the Western system, they risk losing relevance in the eyes of younger generations. On the other hand, choosing figures like Jungkook means entering territory long considered unpredictable, the realm of highly vocal, emotional global fandoms with extraordinary collective power. It is a major gamble. Yet herein lies the paradox. Luxury brands that once held firm control now have to share the stage with fan communities they cannot fully manage. Does this mean the US industry is truly losing control? The answer is likely not a simple yes or no. More accurately, that control has become distributed. America still possesses infrastructure, capital, and historical influence. However, the narratives, emotions, and loyalties of global audiences are beginning to move elsewhere. When a fan in Southeast Asia, Latin America, or the Middle East feels a stronger emotional connection to Jungkook than to a Hollywood celebrity, that symbolic value turns into real economic power. Behind the scenes, these decisions have sparked intense discussions among brand executives. The question is no longer whether Asia matters, that is already a consensus, but how far they must relinquish control over old narratives. The appointments of Zhang Lingyi and Kento Nakajima by Bulgari, Shan Ichuan by Chanel, and Yang Yang by Chow Tai-fook show that brands are experimenting with more plural models of representation. They are no longer speaking to a single cultural center, but to many at once. In such a landscape, America is no longer the sole reference point. What makes this situation even more emotional is the public reaction. ARMY welcomed Jungkook's new role with enthusiasm that felt almost personal, as if the achievement belonged to the collective. At the same time, skeptical voices emerged, questioning whether luxury brands are selling their heritage for short-term relevance. This tension creates a new dynamic. Luxury is no longer solely about aesthetics and quality, but also about cultural politics. All of this shows that decisions that appear quiet, such as the appointment of an ambassador, are in fact part of a much larger structural shift. Jungkook does not stand alone. He is the crest of a long-moving wave. And when that wave reaches the center of the industry, there is no choice but to adapt or be displaced. The question now is no longer whether this change is real, but how far its impact will be felt, and who will truly hold control in the next chapter. Does power always need to be visible in order to truly function, or is the most dangerous form of control precisely the one whose existence is no longer consciously recognized? This question becomes the key to understanding what is actually unfolding after Jungkook assumed the role of global ambassador for Chanel fragrance and beauty in 2026. At this stage, change no longer appears in the form of shocking announcements or sensational headlines. It operates quietly, seeping into the way the industry thinks, makes decisions, and most crucially, shapes the future without open resistance. To this point, the luxury fashion and beauty industry can no longer pretend that everything is proceeding as usual. The United States, which for decades positioned itself as the arbiter of global taste, is beginning to confront the reality that its influence must now be shared. Not because of a lack of resources, but because of a fundamental shift in how the world understands cultural authority. Jungkook, as a central figure in this narrative, does not arrive with claims of power. He arrives with emotional legitimacy built over years through his work, consistency, and direct relationship with the global audience. This is a new form of power, one that is difficult for old systems to counter. Notably, Chanel itself appears to grasp this dynamic with remarkable precision. By appointing Jungkook, the brand is not merely targeting the Asian market or the BTS fanbase. It is anchoring itself at the heart of a broader global conversation. A conversation about identity, representation, and who has the right to define luxury in the post-Western dominance era. Jungkook's statement about Chanel as a house that honors heritage while daring to innovate functions as a two-way declaration. He is not speaking only about Chanel, he is also speaking about himself, and implicitly about the generation he represents. This is where the psychological impact begins to surface. For young consumers, especially those who grew up with K-pop, Korean dramas, and cross-border digital culture, Jungkook is not a foreign figure suddenly imposed by a brand. He is part of their everyday lives. When a face like this appears in a Chanel campaign, luxury stops feeling distant and exclusive in the old sense. It becomes aspirational yet personal. And when luxury becomes personal, loyalty shifts from mere preference to identity. And in this context, the American industry does not truly lose. But it does lose its singular position as the center of gravity. Hollywood still exists, New York Fashion Week still takes place, and Western celebrities still command major stages. Yet they now share space with other narratives of equal strength. Narratives that no longer require Western validation to be considered global. This is a structural shift, not a temporary one. And precisely because of that, it is difficult to resist. Internal industry reactions reflect this unease. Discussions about diversifying brand faces have evolved into discussions about diversifying centers of meaning. The appointments of Jungkook by Tiffany & Company, Milk Pansa by Saint Laurent, or Yang by Chow Tai Fook are no longer seen merely as regional strategies. They are part of a collective effort to align with the new reality that global audiences are no longer homogeneous, and that cultural power has become multipolar. Within such a landscape, Jungkook emerges as the clearest symbol of this shift, standing at the intersection of music, fashion, and global identity. For fans, particularly ARMY, this moment carries deep emotional weight. There is pride, validation, and recognition that goes beyond individual achievement. Jungkook does not simply succeed, he opens doors long considered difficult to penetrate. Yet beneath the celebration lies a subtle awareness that this role carries immense responsibility. Every step, every campaign, every narrative constructed will be read as an indicator of the industry's future direction. Jungkook inevitably becomes a benchmark. Here, the final surprise comes into focus. Control no longer belongs to those who speak the loudest or have ruled the longest, but to those most capable of creating a sense of belonging. Luxury brands understand this, which is why they are moving toward figures who can build cross-cultural connections. America, with all its strength, must now adapt to the reality that it is no longer the sole source of global legitimacy. And perhaps this is the true essence of the entire story. The world is not witnessing the dramatic collapse of one power and the sudden rise of another. What is happening is a quiet transition, where old boundaries fade without noise. Jungkook holding one of the world's largest luxury brands in 2026 is not a symbol of conquest, but a sign that a new era has begun, an era in which global control is no longer owned by a single center, and in which the future of the industry is shaped by those who can speak to the world in the most honest language. If that is the case, then the remaining question is no longer about who is losing control, but about who is most prepared to face a world where control can no longer be claimed, but must be shared.